Okay, folks, we're going to try to do a little more of this. Let's get biblical. This is the anti-missionary screed that Toby Singer has put out. It's quite a large book, quite a lot of material here. Basically, you're getting the Jewish viewpoint of the scriptures here, Judaism's viewpoint. And it's good to know this material because you want to try to learn, what they're saying and how they are arguing against the Messiah, hence the term anti-missionary. Missionary being those who believe in Yeshua Messiah or Jesus Christ, churches call him, and want to tell people about him. So what I've discovered so far about Tovia Singer, he's very, his analysis of the biblical text is devoid of anything beyond what he determines of his own mind to be literal. He doesn't seem to regard anything that's allegorical or even in the mystical realm. And he looks at it as a sterile academic might look at things, with devoid of the kind of thing, the kind of person that the Bible was designed to give the message to were people who were open to other things than just just your sterile academic kind of viewpoint. It deals in the spiritual realm. So this is continuing on. And it came to pass in the days of Ahaz, son of Jotham, son of Uzziah, king of Judah, that Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, marched on Jerusalem to wage war against it, and he could not wage war against it. And it was told to the house of David, saying, Aram has allied itself with Ephraim, and his heart and the heart of his people trembled, as the trees of the forest trembled because of the wind. And the Lord said to Isaiah, now go out toward Ahaz, you and Shar Yashub, your son, to the edge of the conduit of the upper pool, to the road of the washer's field, and you shall say to him, feel secure and calm yourself. Do not fear, and let your heart not be faint because of these two smoking stubs of firebrands, because of the raging anger of Rezin and Aram, and the son of Remaliah. Since Aram planned harm to you, Ephraim and the son of Remaliah, saying, let us go up against Judah to provoke it and annex it to us. Let us crown a king in its midst, one who is good for us. So said the Lord God, neither shall it succeed, neither shall it come to pass, for the chief city of Aram is Damascus, and the chief of Damascus is Rezin. And in another 65 years, Ephraim shall be scattered as a people. And look at that. That's an amazing prophecy. Ephraim would be completely cut off in 65 years at that point. The chief city of Ephraim is Samaria, and the chief of Samaria is the son of Remaliah. If you will not believe, you cannot be trusted. Isn't that something? If you will not believe, you cannot be trusted. And the Lord continued to speak to Ahaz, saying, ask for yourself a sign from the Lord your God. Ask it either in the depths or in the heights above. And Ahaz said, I will not ask. I will not test the Lord. And he said, listen now, O house of David, is it little for you to weary men, that you weary my God as well? Therefore, the Lord of his own shall bring you a sign. Behold, the young woman is with child, and she shall bear a son. Actually, it says a virgin shall be with child, and she shall bear a son, and she shall call his name Emmanuel. Cream and honey he shall eat. Actually, I think it says curds and honey he shall eat, when he knows to reject the bad and choose good. For when the lad does not yet know to reject bad and choose good, the land whose two kings you dread shall be abandoned. Okay. All right, so this is another text that Christians and Messianics alike use to say, hey, this is a prophecy pointing to Yeshua Messiah. And as you probably have guessed, I believe it is a prophecy. Tovia Singer, who has authored this book, does not believe that. Tovia Singer is going to try to do some wrangling to get around it. So let's see what kind of wrangling he does. Cursory examination of the Hebrew text in Isaiah 7:14 reveals that Isaiah had in mind only a normal conception by a young mother, his own wife. Matthew manufactured a made-to-order proof that Isaiah predicted the Messiah was destined to be miraculously conceived of a virgin. He accomplished this task in his infancy narrative by misquoting a verse from Isaiah. He didn't misquote it. The first gospel did not set the best example for countless Christian Bible translators in later centuries. Following in Matthew's footsteps, they also wove many Christological messages into their translations of the Hebrew Bible. Matthew 1:20-23 is only one of his 11 fulfillment citations, which are heavily doctored proof texts. Now remember, this is a rabbi. He's making this argument against the Christian viewpoint. So we're going to see what he has to say, and are not mentioned in any other gospel. Okay, yeah, Matthew does deal with Matthew, when you look at all the four gospels, Matthew is the one that primarily deals with the Old Testament prophecies which point to Messiah. Now look at the insanity of what Singer is saying here. That this is only his own wife. Now look at that. Why would the master of heaven and earth say to a king of an entire nation in a time of war, listen to the insanity of Tovia. Here's the king of Judah. He is hunkered down in Jerusalem, and he's got they should be like the ancient Palestinians of sorts, and the house of Israel, who had totally fallen into idolatry. They were in confederacy. They were coming against Judah and Jerusalem. And here's Tovia saying, oh, this prophecy is just about Isaiah. So here's Isaiah, listen to the insanity of this, saying, oh, my wife is going to have a child. My wife is going to have a child. Hey, that'll, that's a good, something that'll calm your nerves down a little bit. Ahaz, my wife will have a child. Listen to that. No, I mean, that's insanity. What the rabbis are saying here in this, it doesn't even fit the situation at all. No, the prophet is saying to a king who is beleaguered and besieged, he's saying, look, there's going to be a great master that will come down the road, and he will be someone great. He'll be someone great. The prophet was not talking about his own wife. That's insanity on Tovia Singer's part there. But that's interesting to know that that's what they say, isn't it? Matthew ripped Isaiah 7:14 out of context. Now here's how he always talks about context, but remember, context is in the eye of the beholder. And Tovia, of course, is dyed-in-the-wool, unbelieving Jew, and he's very academic Jew as well. I would wager that Tovia Singer doesn't even believe in the miraculous. He probably does not believe in the miraculous. So let's see here. It is clear to anyone reading this entire passage of Isaiah that there's nothing in this text that was intended to be a messianic prophecy. Oh, yes, there is. It was a messianic, because you have to look at the situation. The time was Ahaz could have easily been overrun. But why would Yahweh say to Ahaz, the king of Judah, some trifling thing in the midst of that? Oh, and then Isaiah would be the one, hey, by the way, you're about to be killed by the Philistines and the house of Israel king. You're about to be killed by them. But hey, by the way, I just want to share my good news with you. My wife's going to have a kid. Listen to that. That's insane. Insane. Destined to be fulfilled in the distant future. Rather, this chapter is clearly speaking early of the Syro-Phoenician War, which occurred during the lifetime of the prophet Isaiah and the rule of King Ahaz. Why would he say anything about Ahaz's reign when Ahaz at that time is being besieged by very powerful enemies? In fact, this chapter would be nonsensical if it were discussing an event that was set to occur more than 700 years. See, this is Tovia Singer's problem. Tovia Singer does not understand that a day of the Lord is at 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as a day. This is a metric that prophets. Remember that Tovia Singer is a sterile academic. He doesn't have any connection with heaven to really understand these cycles. And he doesn't. He seems to be so out of place in his interpretations. Isaiah's 7th chapter begins with a detailed description of events surrounding the military crisis that confronted Ahaz, the king of the southern kingdom of Judah. Okay, so let's see here. All right, the Syro-Ephraimite War. Isaiah 7:14 is found in an elaborate section of the book of Isaiah, which describes in detail the Syro-Ephraimite War. In the 8th century BCE, Syria was a great regional power, ruled by King Tiglath-Pileser III. He reigned from 745 to 727 BCE. Now they notice how they like to put BCE, which is the before the Common Era, whereas the church uses BC, before Christ. The smaller nations of Syria, often called Aram, ruled by King Rezin, and the kingdom of Israel, often called Ephraim because of the leading tribe in the northern kingdom of Israel, under King Pekah, had been vassal states of Assyria. In 735 BC, however, both of these kingdoms decided to break away from the Assyrian Empire. They were probably vassals. Yeah, they were vassals. Ahaz, the king of the southern kingdom of Judah, was loyal to Assyria and refused to join them. So Rezin and Pekah prepared to invade Jerusalem in order to depose him and install their own choice of king. In the face of the invasion, Ahaz and his citizens were understandably petrified by what appeared to be their impending doom. God sent Isaiah along with his family to assure Ahaz that his enemies will fail. Ahaz was reluctant to accept the prophecy and was told to ask God for a sign, showing that the oracle is a true one. Feigning piety, however, Ahab refused to ask for a sign, claiming that he would not test God. It may not have been. He may not have feigned piety. He may have really been. There are people that are more righteous than they need to be for their own good. It says in the scripture, be not overmuch righteous. Why should I destroy thee so? The Father understands when you're in the midst of crisis. Isaiah censured the king and replied that he will have a sign whether he asks for it or not. Isaiah made it clear that he was sending a sign in the days of Ahaz. No, he doesn't say that. Now, when it says days in a prophetic sense, a day of the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as a day. Understand that. Who lived more than 700 years before Jesus was born. Isaiah wanted King Ahaz to wait for God to rescue him instead of relying on his reliance for the king of Syria. That doesn't make any sense at all about that prophecy. Why would he bring up a son shall be born unto you and then say, hey, this is my son. I'm Isaiah. This is my son. Ahaz, a wicked king, did not deserve divine protection. Despite this, the Almighty rescued him because of the covenant he forged with his father David. Now, that's correct. That's correct. It is with this reason that Isaiah frequently addressed him as the house of David in this chapter rather than by name. For Ahaz was protected in the merit of the promise that God made to King David rather than as a result of his own virtue. The following chapters, Ahaz's son Hezekiah, a righteous king, will be saved from the hands of Assyria in a far more spectacular and miraculous fashion. The church mistranslated critical passages for these texts as well. No, they didn't mistranslate them. The truth is the rabbis have the lying pen. They have the lying pen of the scribes. Truth is the rabbis. That's why Jeremiah came out against the scribes of the house of Judah. The lying pen of the scribes. You know why? Because it was like the children have cut their teeth on sour grapes. They were so upset by the events that happened during the time of Yeshua Messiah. Because it was to any honest observer, they had slayed the very Lord of life. They had brought scurrilous, lying. The Jews had brought scurrilous, lying witnesses to rig the court. And that's how it happened. They rigged the court. The Jews, they rigged the court. Think of that. In order to get Yeshua condemned. Okay? And then they thought, well, we're finally done with this troublemaker. And then shortly after that, 40 years later, bam, Rome slaps them down and destroys Jerusalem. And they still wanted to pop their arrogant heads up, and bam, 135 CE, Rome slaps them down again. You see? They serve a mighty Elohim, but they were not obedient to that mighty Elohim. They were not discerning the events of the time. This is the problem with Tovia Singer, so be aware of that. All right. Around the year 732 BC, two massive armies, the northern kingdom of Israel, led by King Pekah, and the kingdom of Assyria, Aram, led by King Rezin, threatened to destroy King Ahaz and the house of David. Yeah, that's true. Okay, okay. Behold, a virgin shall be with child and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us. Now, why, if Tovia Singer's argument is correct, that this was just Isaiah saying, hey, buddy, I know you're about to die. Got an army out there around you. Oh, by the way, my wife's having a son. Listen to the lunacy of that. This is Tovia Singer's. This is the rabbis that come up with the craziest things to get away from the plain meaning or the situation. Therefore, the Lord of his own shall give you a sign. Behold, the young woman is with child. And this is back in this Alma thing. By the way, Alma, a young woman, can be a virgin. She can be a virgin. And she shall bear a son, and she shall call his name Emmanuel. Yes, a young woman can also be not a virgin. She could be a loose woman. It's just a general statement. If you were to point out that young woman, how do you know if she's a virgin or not? But if you put line upon line, precept upon precept, and it's a whole narrative, then it comes together. You begin to get a closer idea of what that is talking about. On top of the fact that the Greek copy have of a certainty a word that means virgin. Okay, so yes, the virgin birth is real. Because why was it real? Because Messiah had to come outside of the fallen race of Adam. See, man fell after Adam, and sin was imputed, a corruption was imputed to Adam. And so man after man, yes, there were certain men who stood up and they were righteous in their deeds, but that the very essence of their being was corrupt and fallen. And so now you think of it this way. Think of little children, especially when you deal with racism. Let's say you got a little boy, maybe 3 years old, and a little black boy, 3 years old. They play together. They don't know anything about racism or the evil of the world, you see. Before the age of accountability, children are the best example we have, little children, to see what innocency is. You see, Adam, before he fell, was innocence. He had innocency. And so did Eve. But mankind ever since then has the innocency has gone away, and it's been replaced with utter corruption. And that's why Yeshua had to come. Okay? This is why Yeshua said of his own disciples, he said, look, if you want to see eternal life, you must become like little children. You must recover that innocency, that simple childlike trust in the master. Rabbi Tovia Singer, he can't figure that out, because he's got a head like this. It's a big head. But you got to get past the big head, and you've got to understand into the heart, into the spirit, the innocency. We got to recover the innocency to have eternal life. So yes, virgin shall be with child. Therefore, the Lord of his own shall give you a sign. Behold, the young woman is with child, and they shall bear a son, and she shall call his name Emmanuel. This is what they are. And then the insanity of Tovia Singer saying that this Isaiah passage is just the prophet in the midst of a war. So, by the way, my wife's going to have a kid. Okay. That's lunacy. All right, Isaiah identified Ahaz's implacable enemies, two kings whose fierce military forces besieged Jerusalem. In the face of the invasion, Ahaz and his subjects were gripped with fear. God therefore said, Isaiah to assure King Ahaz the divine protection was at hand. God would shield him in his kingdom. The prophet pledged Ahaz that his deliverance was certain, his people were safe, and these two hostile armies would fail to subjugate Jerusalem. Notice that in this half-assed explanation here, he doesn't say anything about the significance of that child. That child is deeply significant. Notice, look at the prophecy. Behold, a virgin shall, or even here, therefore the Lord of his own shall give you a sign. Behold, the young woman is with child, and she shall bear a son, and she shall call his name Emmanuel. That Emmanuel name is powerful. It means God with us, and through that child, God with us. All right, let's see here. The prophet gave Ahaz a timetable for his life-saving event. The crisis would end while Isaiah's soon-to-be-born son was yet an infant. It was not Isaiah's soon-to-be-born son. That doesn't even fit. Doesn't fit. How would that in any way comfort? It is clear from the traumatic events recounted in this chapter that Isaiah's prophecy related to the siege of Jerusalem by the two Norman armies of kings Pekah and Retzin. The prophet assured this weary nation that by the time this child, whose imminent birth was foretold, reached the age of maturity, do you really believe? Also look at this? Do you really believe that that child was only eating honey and curds? Honey and curds, which were a luxury. Really, they were things of the land. They were produce of the land, because you got your curds from your flocks out there, and you got your honey out there where the bees were. But the city was besieged. That doesn't even make sense. All right, let's see here. Two additional passages of the Bible. 1 Kings 15:29-30 and 2 Kings 16:5-9 confirmed that this prophecy was fulfilled contemporaneously when both these leaders were assassinated. Okay, yeah, well, the Aram guy and the other guy, Remaliah, yeah, they were. The siege failed. There's nothing in this chapter that even hints at a birth of a future Messiah who would be conceived 700 years later. That's not true. It does, because that is the hope. That is the essence of the hope that was given at a time of imminent destruction. Imagine, there's no hope in Isaiah saying, oh yeah, my wife's having a kid. Imagine saying that to a king. But if you say, look, if you give the king the idea of something even higher, saying, look, there's this war, this horrific event that you're suffering, soon it's going to be completely dealt with, and there's going to be a coming leader. That would fill with incredible hope. Incredible hope. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Okay. No, he's the one that's nonsensical. No, he's the one that's nonsensical here. Bearing this in mind, we can now begin to grasp the full scope of how the book of Matthew misquoted the famous passage from the book of Isaiah. No, the book of Matthew did. And look at the Emmanuel, God with us. To a king and to a nation, it's just not them that they're concerned about. It's their future survival. Future survival. That's what they're concerned with, too. Let's see. Emmanuel, okay, God is with us. In Isaiah, consists of two Hebrew words, El, meaning God, and Imanu, meaning with us, okay? The name is a sign that points to the divine protection over King Ahaz and his people. It actually points to the divine protection over the entire line of his people. Now, if it's true that Ahaz was besieged by Assyria, they would have bigger problems than just their brothers in the northern kingdom. See, they have bigger problems to think about. The very survival of the line, the very people, is at stake. And that's why that prophecy speaks to a greater thing than just the prophet saying, hey, by the way, my wife's going to have a kid. Don't worry, this incredible military campaign that's levied against you, and you're holed up in your city. By the time she has a baby, it'll go away. Now, in a sense, in a worldly sense, that might have some semblance of people who don't think beyond just the situation there. But the scripture, when we look at these prophecies, they look it down the road. They are talking about the preservation and the Father preserving Israel, the Commonwealth of Israel, all throughout the centuries. That's really the essence of what's happening here. Let's see. Had God not intervened in Assyria after might war, the combined armies of Syria and the northern kingdom would have destroyed the Davidic dynasty and devastated the southern kingdom of Judah. And when you say destroyed the Davidic dynasty, that would have been the end of the Jews. That would have been the end of everything. For the past 2 millennia, the fundamentalist church has been in an unenviable predicament as it sought to rescue the book of Matthew's spurious claim that Isaiah predicted Jesus. That's not true. They stand tall on that. How could a miraculous birth more than 7 centuries later be a source of comfort to King Ahaz? Because it speaks to the preservation of the entire line. It lets the people know, somebody that gets into a king position, they're more concerned about just they, them, and I. Me, I, and myself. They're concerned about the preservation of a nation. They're concerned about, you ever wondered why kings want to erect things that speak to, the history of their nation, and they want to preserve for the future? This is why they're in such a hurry to make sure that they have heirs, that continue the line. That's what comforts a king. By the way, Ahaz, if he is faithful to the Assyrian Empire, and he knows the Assyrians are more powerful than his guys outside the gates. Think about that. Ahaz, why would Ahaz take comfort? He's already allied with a much powerful nation. See. Okay. Let's see. Clearly, is a near-term prophecy that was part of a historic narrative and was fulfilled in the immediate time frame, not hundreds of years in the future. That's not true. And by the way, here's another thing to think about. Have you ever heard of dual prophetic fulfillment? Dual prophetic fulfillment? That's a real thing, too. Consider that. That a prophecy fulfillment has more than just one idea. The Almighty, he stacks events many times in fulfillment. But it definitely includes that future preservation of the line and the coming of Messiah. Let's see. In summary, cursory reading the entire subchapter of Isaiah makes it plain that the prophet has not discussed any miraculous birth, let alone one that would occur 7 centuries later. Why did a Messiah omit Isaiah's definite article? This might be interesting. Let's see here. Keep this in mind. It's easy to grasp why the author of the book of Matthew felt compelled to ignore the implications of the Hebrew grammar of Isaiah 7:14, the conspicuous definite article ha, which means the. Let's see. Isaiah is speaking of his wife, a prophetess in her own right, a woman well known to Ahaz. She was likely present at the washer's field and accompanied their son Shar-Yashub. Isaiah's address to the house of David and his use of second-person plural grammatical forms when speaking with King Ahaz likely indicates that other people were present as well. Okay, in Hebrew grammar, the letter ha, hey, at the beginning of the word, which is the prefix of the word ha, Elma, the woman, the woman. It's a definite article called hey hadia. Let's see. This means that the hey is in this world. It must be the hey Hahadia is the definite article. That's the particular, that's the grammar thing there he's talking about. And this letter indicates the noun is known to both the speaker and the listener. Actually, no, because you could say, the king is coming. In a province, you could say let's see. You could say the ship is coming across the ocean. You might not know the details, more details about that. What that ship is, or who it is, or what the name is, or, that kind of thing. And it's kind of a weak argument here, I think. But let's take a look at that anyway. This is in Isaiah 7:14. I'll take a look at that. Spell Isaiah right. All right, what we need, let's get into the Hebrew here. Okay, therefore we'll give the Lord Adonai lechem to you all. Notice this says to you all. So that also, to you all, lechem. Okay, so it's you all. It's not just the king. It's you all. It's speaking to the entire nation. Let's see, out, which is sign, hine, behold, and the ha'alma, the virgin, and then shall become pregnant, bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Okay, let's take a look at this to see what they've got here under virgin. Okay, alma, young woman. It can also mean a virgin. See, I was right. It can include, when you're talking about the general idea of a young woman, it can include the idea that she's a virgin. Okay? By the way, in Tovia Singer's mind, he's got such a polluted mind, he already goes to the assumption that that word just means basically what the Bible would call a whore, a woman who has not been married, but she's had sexual relations. This is whoredom. Okay? In his mind, he's thinking this. But in the biblical sense, the holy sense of things, a young woman, the assumption should always be that she's a maiden, that she's a young woman who has not been with a man, from the holy sense of things. Now, in our world, we don't see that. But in the holy sense of things, from the perspective, it's all about perspective. All right, let's see here. I need to get rid of this. Okay. Now, this is an interesting thing here. Why did Isaiah omit? Okay, all right, so yeah, we looked at that. By the way, it says to you all. That's the thing you should focus on. Okay, so it's not just him. Isaiah used this indiscreet grammatical device to convey that both he and Ahaz knew the identity of the mother. No, it doesn't. He's not just speaking to Ahaz, because he says, shall be given to you all. It's more than Ahaz. It's the nation. He's speaking to the nation that's about to be destroyed. Isaiah 7:14, the Hebrew word lahama, therefore means young woman, or it could be the virgin. The presence of this definite article, however, creates an enormous problem for the first gospel. No, it doesn't. Mary was unknown to Isaiah and Ahaz. Mary was therefore compelled to remove the definite article in Jesus's infancy story. That's not true. That's not true. When you look at, first of all, now here's another thought to consider. Jeremiah says the line pen of the scribes. How do we know that the text that Tovia Singer, even if it's there, even that definite article, hey, is there or it's not there? Tovia Singer, how do we know that that's one of their ways they had to overcome? They had to overcome the fact that the Christians, and remember Stephen, who was the first martyr of the church, he would argue in such a way that the Pharisees, the rabbis of that time, they could not refute him. So what did they do? It says we have several documents to say that they altered things in the Torah. They altered things to try to get rid of the prophecies that clearly spoke to a virgin birth and Messiah. Okay, so there's that aspect too you got to think about. No, I don't think Matthew compelled that at all. After all, how could these men have been aware of the identity of a virgin who would save them from their siege 7 centuries later? The whole point of it was to give hope to an entire people, not just Ahaz. Accordingly, the author of the first gospel deleted the definite article and rendered how as a virgin. Would note that Matthew inserted an indefinite article, which indicates that its noun is not identifiable of a listener. The indefinite article, however, does not exist as a part of speech in Hebrew language. So basically what he's saying is that in Matthew, it said a woman. The indefinite article is a woman rather than the woman. The woman. But in the context of King Ahaz being spoken to by Isaiah the prophet and his son, there is an emphasis on this figure that will eat honey and curds and learn and know what is the difference between evil and good, and will be called Emmanuel. God is with us, not just little old Ahaz. God is with us as a line, as a future line. Let's see here. As mentioned above, the strength of this definite article indicates that the woman accompanied her husband Isaiah and her son Shar-Yashub to the encounter of Ahaz. The definite article can therefore be understood as a demonstrative pronoun. No. How do we? It doesn't say there. It doesn't say there that that the woman accompanied them. It specifically says who was there. Specifically, he's making that up in his head to try to justify. In order to bring out its force and emphasize to whom Isaiah was referring, it is likely that Isaiah pointing to his wife, who was present at the scene of the prophet's interview with Ahaz, because as we shall see, there are instructions for her in this prophecy as well. Let's see here. Let's see where he gets this from. Did Matthew alter the time frame of the pregnancy? The woman who was addressed in Isaiah 7:14 is already pregnant. This is clearly evident from Isaiah's use of the adjective hara, is pregnant, which appears in the perfect past tense in order to convey the sense that the woman had already conceived. The dramatic events that are described in Isaiah's 7th chapter, however, do not support Matthew's elaborate infancy narrative. According to Matthew, the mother to be addressed as Isaiah will not conceive for another 7 centuries. The first gospel, therefore, mistranslates the word hara as well, launching it into the future tense and rendering it, Matthew 1:23, as shall be with child, instead of is with child. In essence, Matthew rewrote Isaiah 7:14 so that this passage appeared to be a prophecy of a conception that will take place in the future rather than one which has already occurred. Well, okay, so there's several ways to look at this. There could be a double meaning here, as there are in many prophecies. There's a double meaning. For example, there's many people who believe that Jeremiah 51 is speaking of a future nation too, the destruction of a future nation. And this is why Revelation refers to Babylon as well in Revelation. Now, think of this. Even the preterists, they say, well, that Babylon is Rome. Or they say that it's Israel itself, Judah itself. But Babylon was the first of mighty nations in Daniel's vision. So you got Babylon. Remember, Daniel he interpreted King Nebuchadnezzar's dream. It was a dream rather, and Daniel was given the answer to that dream. And in that golden statue, you had Nebuchadnezzar, which he was part of the Babylonian, and so that was the head of gold. And then the shoulders of silver were Medo-Persians. So the Medos, Persians, you got 2 arms. Then you've got the iron, that's Rome. And then you've got the two legs down there. That is the Holy Roman Empire, because remember that Rome split, and Constantinople and then Rome. And so you have these two things going. And then the very last end time empire is a mix of iron and clay. So think about that. So essentially, but in Revelation, it speaks to that earlier. It uses that term, Babylon. Okay, so this is all throughout Holy Writ. You've got this doubling of prophecy. You've got the present and you've got the future that it's talking about, because the Almighty is not bound by time. Tovia Singer can't get that into his head. So he's making all these elaborate claims, trying to shove out a future fulfillment. Okay. Now, do I believe that it's absolutely inconceivable that this prophecy could have included this? I think it's unlikely, but it clearly, the future, the preservation of the line and the promise of the Messiah giving relief to these people who are being beleaguered by a foreign army that's the real hope here. That's the real hope here. It's more than just that king at that time, because he's saying to you all. He's talking to the entire nation. All right, who will call his name Emmanuel? The author of the first gospel tampered with other words in Isaiah 7:14 that he considered inconsistent with the virgin birth story. Isaiah used the word, let's see, look at this, vakaret. Yeah, this is the third person, feminine singular verb in the future tense. That means she will call or she will name, meaning the mother of the boy. Now look at how easy it would take for a scribe to remove the tav there. Okay, you see that, how easy that would be 200 years after the events in the first century. So everything that he's going into, it all goes back to you cannot trust the text of the Jews, because the prophet Jeremiah himself said they were the lying pen of the scribes. They lie about things, and they're good at lying about things. They'll either remove letters or they'll add letters to try to destroy the clear truth of what's being given to us. Let's see here. The difficulty with this feminine singular pronoun she poses for church cannot be overstated. Throughout the entire corpus of the New Testament, Mary never calls Jesus Emmanuel. In fact, he is told in the book of Luke that the angel Gabriel specifically instructed Mary to name her son Jesus, not Emmanuel. Actually, Yeshua. Yah is with us. Yah saves. It's actually Yah saves. He likes to use this Greek rendering of Jesus. Notice that. So actually, she was given Yah saves. Does anybody really believe that the angel Gabriel is speaking in Greek to a Jewish woman, a young woman who's not married at the time? Does anybody really believe that? This is Torah. This is Knucklehead Tovia being disingenuous in the extreme by even using this term Jesus. Okay? The prophecy says God is with us, Emmanuel. But what he was really called was Yeshua. Yah saves. Now, how is there really that much of a divergence between those two viewpoints? No, not really. The angel said to her, "Fear not, Mary, for you have found favor with God, and behold, you shall conceive in thy womb and bring forth a son, and you shall call his name." What he puts it there? It's Yeshua. Yah saves. Okay. They're not speaking some pseudo-Anglican, English, Greek kind of combination here, okay? Jesus doesn't have that meaning in it, because that was, and notice how even the rabbis in their Talmud, which is in many parts is satanic. There are some useful things historically in the Talmud, but there's a lot of satanic stuff in there too. Notice how they won't even give the full name as given to Yeshua. They'll say Yeshu, which means destruction. Okay, you see that? So the rabbis are very deceptive in what they do, and you have to be careful and know you need to have a certain maturity in Messiah. Furthermore, there's not a single instance in the New Testament where anybody calls Jesus by the name Emmanuel. They don't even call him Jesus. They call him Yeshua. The Matthew deflected this problem by altering the third-person pronoun, which we find in the original Hebrew text of Isaiah, from the singular to plural, thereby masking the one who is to name the child. Now there's nowhere. Here is Jeremiah, the Jew, saying the lying pen of the scribes has handled the word of God falsely. Now, when you think of it from the Jewish mindset, they're saying the Christians have altered, the Christians have altered, the Christians have altered. The Christians are saying, your own prophet is saying you're a bunch of liars. There's no Christian person coming out and saying the lying pen of the monks have handled the word of God falsely. The lying pen of the monks. No, it's the Jews that have got the problem, that have the prophecy. Jeremiah is saying, you guys are lying about the word of God. In other words, instead of translating the verb vakaret correctly, as she will call, Matthew changes the name of the word to read, and they shall call. In so doing, Matthew disguises the mother's role in naming the child. Now, I thought the they was him, and I think it's unless I looked at that maybe that letter was. Let's take a look at that again. I want to look at that. How do we get back there? All right, this is Isaiah. Get down to Isaiah 7:14. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, you all, lechem. Now, why is he saying, okay, so he's talking about this one, vakarat, and shall call, vakarat. Notice that there is a difference in Tovia Singer's text versus what now, of course, this Bible Hub is accepting of all of the text together, and it uses vakarat and shall call his name. Okay, all right, so all right, let's see here. And so doing, Matthew disguised the mother's role in naming the child, while the text of the original Hebrew makes it clear that the mother was assigned the divine task to replace her son Emmanuel. Matthew has the third person plural pronoun they replace she, who are Matthew's they, who are to name Jesus Emmanuel, and remember Yeshua Emmanuel. They do not exist, yet by altering the original pronoun, well, I can tell you who the they are. Very angels of Elohim, Yahweh himself, they. Remember in Genesis, it says, let us make man in our image. Let us. Okay. So the Almighty Yah up in heaven, he must have counselors, angelic counselors around him, just like any king in the universe would have, or in the earth. Kings would always have counselors. Let us make man in our image. Okay. It's such a spurious argument here that Tovia's got. Let's see. Yeah, by altering the original pronoun, Matthew shifted his task away from Mary and assigned it to the anonymous group. Look it up for yourself. For the most part, Christian Bibles do not support Matthew's mistranslation of this word in their rendering of Isaiah 14. Instead, almost all Christian Bibles translate Bakarat as she will call in Isaiah. Let's take a look at that in Bible Hub. Yeah, they've got and she shall call. Let's see, Bakarat. See here. On Bible Hub, they've got that. So it must be that there's maybe there's a King James. Let's see what the King James says. And shall call his, and they've just got and shall call his name Emmanuel. And shall call his name. Bear son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Okay. Look at these other ones. So shall give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, shall call his name Emmanuel. Okay. Curds and honey when he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the boy knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land whose two kings you dread will be deserted. Okay, let's see. The land whose two kings you dread will be deserted. This is by the way, this is talking about the Assyrian destruction of the northern kingdom. And it says deserted here. If it was just a situation to where the house of Israel in the north and allied with Aram were beaten back, why would they be completely taken out of the land? You see, that's the other thing to think about. All right, let's go back to the Hebrew here. All right, let's see here. For the most part, she will call. Okay, no Christian translator in history apparently possessed the temerity to correct the first gospel's mistranslation in Matthew 1:23. Okay. By the way, when you see that tav there, it could indicate a feminine sense. It doesn't have to indicate a pronominal, she. That's the other thing I thought about when looking at this. Now, this is interesting, something to think about, okay? The significance of the name Emmanuel. Why did the Hebrew scriptures place a strong emphasis on the names of Isaiah's children? No, it's not his name, no. No. For example, why does Isaiah record that his son, Shar-Yeshub, accompanied him to the washer's field to relay King Ahaz the prophecy of deliverance? After all, this son is not mentioned in any other place in the Bible. The Talmud teaches us that there is no extra words in Tanakh. What role did he play in the Syro-Ephraimite war? In Isaiah 7:14, the wife of the prophet is told, no, it's not the wife. It's talking about a future prophecy there. She will name her unborn son Emmanuel, given the strength of definite article in Isaiah 14. Is likely that Isaiah pointed to his wife, who was present at the scene of the prophet's encounter with Ahaz, to receive her instructions. Why was she given this divine mandate? What is significance of her child's name? Following chapter, Isaiah's wife gives birth to the promised child. Isaiah is commanded to call the boy Maher-shalal-hash-baz. I remember that, which means hasten the loot, quicken the booty. Okay, so Maher-shalal-hash-baz is a redundant name because Maher-shalal and Hashbaz means essentially the same thing. The double name, now, isn't that something? That seems to speak to a double. My gosh, I mean, even in his own argument, it speaks to the truth of what the church is saying here. The double name signifies the destruction of the two armies that attacked Ahaz, Syria, and Samaria, led by kings Rezin and Pekah, respectively, but it could also signify the double interpretation of the prophecy. That's what I would think about that. Now, that's an interesting thing there, that it's redundancy here. Okay, all right, let's see. In other words, the mother is required to call her son Emmanuel, and the father Isaiah is commanded to name his child Maher-shalal-hash-baz. So why would you have the mother in a patriarchal society naming her child something different than what the name is given? You see the disingenuousness here in Tovia Singer's argument. This is very disingenuous. All right, let's see here. And the father Isaiah is commanded to name his son. Let me see this here. Looks like we're getting close to my hour here. Now look at the argument here. He's saying that there's no biblical proof that the mother named her son Emmanuel, if his argument's correct. Now, he's making this up off the top of his head. By trying to make this argument that says this name says essentially the same thing. The father is commanded to name his son this name, but nowhere in the text does it say the mother decided to overrule the father and say Emmanuel. That is hilariously disingenuous on the part of Tovia Singer. The name of a child is ordinarily a profound spiritual moment. According to Jewish tradition, the name of a baby is a statement of the child's special character and path in life. For at the beginning of life, we give a name, and at the end of life, a good name is all we take with us. Now, and of course, he's putting Talmud baloney here. The name of a prophet's child, however, conveys a national portent. It's a sign that is significant for the Jewish people. Isaiah expresses this principle in the same chapter. Behold, I and the children whom the Lord hath given me shall be for signs and for wonders in Israel, for the Lord of hosts who dwells in Mount Zion. Okay, all right. Isaiah's Hebrew name, Yeshayahu, means the salvation of God. The Almighty gave the prophet a mandate to convey his vision of deliverance regarding Jerusalem, except there's nowhere where Isaiah is called by a different name. You see that, how tricky he's being here? The capital of the king of Judah, the name of both of his children are also signs and portents of the Jewish people. Shar Yashiv, the name of the prophet said, literally means the remnant will remain. It's talking about the house of Judah will remain. This child name conveys the promise that the southern kingdom of Judah will be preserved. Isaiah's wife is to name her second child. No, it doesn't say that, Emmanuel. It doesn't say anywhere that she named this child Emmanuel. It says, you shall name him this other name, Yehar-Shahashbaz, or something like that. Okay, which means God with us. No, he's adding that. He's inserting that in there because he's got to hold to his viewpoint that it couldn't possibly also have a future or strictly a future fulfillment in the virgin birth, which would be something even more momentous than this situation at this point in time, because it's talking about the very preservation of the nation. Okay, like his elder brother Emmanuel's name. I mean, you can't imagine that's the only battle Judah is going to come up against. When the father gives a prophecy, it's a prophecy that gives the people hope for something in the future, just like the Atid Lavo, which is the millennial reign. It gives people hope for the future, too. But he wants it to just be relevant to that little thing right there. So I don't think that's correct. Like his elder brother, Emmanuel's name signifies that God will stand guard over the kingdom of Judah. Isaiah is commanded to name that same child Maher-Shalal-Hash-Baz, which describes the destruction that will befall both of the enemies of the southern kingdom of Judah. Where else in the Bible do we see a mother contradicting the father and giving a different name? That's doesn't make sense at all. In essence, the name of Isaiah's family are all portents to signify that God had shelter, protect, and save the southern kingdom of Judah. In contrast, Isaiah's contemporary, Hosea, a prophet who primarily preached to the northern kingdom, was given children whose names made them like walking prophecies of doom, predicting the fall of the 10 northern tribes. Well, that's true. And their severed covenant with God. The name of Hosea's daughter, Lo Ruhamah, which translates as not pitied, was also chosen by God, but that was the only name in record she was given. And we don't have this strange situation that he's trying to insert in here, that the father said, this is the child's name, and the mother says, oh, this is the other child's name. Totally different name. But as a sign of his displeasure with the people of Israel for following other gods, she is redeemed, shown mercy with the term Ruhamah. Okay. Actually, the name of the child is Lo Ruhamah, no mercy. Let's take a look at that. Hosea 2:23. All right, and I will sow for myself in the earth, and there it is, Ruhamah. There it is, Lo Ruhamah, not who had obtained mercy, Lo Ruhamah. And I will say to not Lo Ami. Yeah, no, not my people. Let's see. Yeah, the other one was called Lo Ami, not my people. And this was a prophecy relative to the destruction of the northern kingdom where the 10 tribes were carried away. You ever wonder why Yeshua himself said, I am not sent except unto those who are the lost sheep of Israel? He's talking about those remnants that had come in back in who were still attending the feasts, and yet were not citizens of Judah. Okay, they're coming from all over the world. And I don't see how he can make this argument here. It's very disingenuous in many ways. As a sign of the Almighty's pleasure with the people of Israel following other gods, unlike Isaiah's wife, who was a prophet of God, Hosea's wife was a faithless prostitute, a seeming portrait of the northern kingdom, which was unfaithful to the God of Israel. Don't boast, Mr. Singer. You guys were just as dirty. Notice it says that in Jeremiah. You guys were just as dirty, essentially. The only reason why you're preserved is for the sake of the fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Because if the Father had wiped out all y'all's, there would be no Messiah. There'd be no salvation of the world. He likes to boast, doesn't he? In short, God instructed prophets to give their children unusual names, which served as signs to the nation whom they preached. That's true. When Matthew changed the meaning of the word bakaret, how do we know that the line pen of the scribes didn't change that? From she shall call to they shall call. Now, why is it? Okay, so if this is the case, the other thing I'm thinking about, he tampered with the instruction that God gave to his prophetess, the wife of Isaiah, not Mary. No. It's Mary, because Mary is the only one that singularly used Emmanuel. There's nowhere in the Bible that Tovia Singer is pointing to where the child of Isaiah and his prophetess wife is named Emmanuel. Isaiah himself. Now, why would Isaiah countermand what the prophecy itself had given? If he really intended that for his wife's child, why would he give a completely different name? You see, totally disingenuous there. All right. I think that's enough for today. I'm going to add a bookmark here, and we'll start at okay, let's get there. Let's add a note there. Would a natural conception be called a sign? Okay, all right, so we got that. This is interesting. It's been a very interesting study for me. Ultimately, the Christian that comes to faith in Messiah, it is experiential, and it's belief in the text, the records, and it's belief in why would 12 men die for a lie? Okay. You see, men might be willing to die for a good man, but why would they die? They all die for a lie. You see? Because remember, think of them. Here they are, and Yeshua is gone. He's gone up to heaven. Or think of it even in the sense of how the Jews believe that he's just rotting away in some cave somewhere. Why would the apostles, if that was really what they had seen and heard, why would they continue the lie, all 12 of them, and be tortured and killed horribly? See, that's the crux. That's the most powerful argument, Christianity. It's the story that is perpetuated. And when you put this together with the fact that the Jews are known liars, because Jeremiah calls them out himself. He said the lying pen of the scribes has handled it falsely. See, there's no corollary Christian condemnation of how the Christians have handled their text. Now, is it true that the monks, and they have tried to get away from a Torah thing? Okay, yeah, there could be some of that, but this is never called out that way. And by one of their own number, see, by one of their own number. But one of the Jews' own number, Jeremiah, actually calls out the lying pens of the scribes as handled falsely, because even back then, the text must have been somewhat altered in a sense. That would prevent them from understanding the prophecies that were relative at that timeline. So that's just something to think about too. All right, guys. So I'm going to get this up on YouTube, and I hope you guys, get something out of this. Put some comments down there. I try my best to go through this material and my years of study, but I really would appreciate if other people out there too, or study this stuff, can put some other things down in the comments, because I think that would help us build an even better case, dealing with this. All right. So for all of that, I will say shalom, shalom. Figure out which, there we go. Alt Q. That's all I need is Alt Q. All right. Shalom, shalom, guys.